Hello, AJ. You're on time.
Hello, hello.
Uh,
You're right.
yeah. So can you see my screen?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Cheers.
Beautiful. So uh, today we will talk about other types of databases, which are document-oriented databases, and you're kind of familiar with them, kind of, because you already work with JSON files. I mean, and they are pretty much the same. I mean, pretty much, but still not. So, document-oriented databases, they're kind of like JSON files, and they behind the scene they kind of look the same. So you have an array, you have objects inside, you have basically the object structure uh, inside it. So this is how document databases works, and we have the most popular for our stack is MongoDB, and we have quite a few actually, but we will talk just about MongoDB because this is like the mainstream, I think, in that for document-oriented databases. The same as we have MySQL for SQL databases and for relational databases. Same here with Mongo. So a bit of vocabulary. So in SQL databases, we have a database, and this is just a database, right? And the same we have for NoSQL, which is our object-oriented databases. We also call it database. For SQL, we call tables, and here we have collections. It's the same thing. So the collection is basically this thing. It's like your top level array. This is the collection. It's a table. Also in SQL we have rows. Here we have documents, and documents, they are just top level objects, let's say, where you store your data. And columns refers to fields, which is just one key value pair in within the document or the object. Yep. So document databases are very efficient for catalogs, and what it means, it's why is that actually? So imagine that you have a relational database like MySQL, you have tables with products, etc. And it's very hard for you when you need to get the particular element, let's say the products, you need to search through the whole database. It's easy, like from the code perspective, it's easy because you just write in a simple query and you think that it's not a big deal to write it. But to process it for the server, it takes resources because it will look through whole the database and will look for the particular match, and that is why you waste in resources. And when you have like document oriented database, you just point in by ID, basically you get in particular element. You don't need to loop through the whole thing. I mean, not you, but the server and the engine of the language. It's just taken by the key or by ID or by whatever, anything else. Sorry, we have a few more guests. Yeah, so that is why it's commonly used in e-commerce because you have like a catalog of products, and each product has different values, key value pairs. And this is another thing with relational databases. You have like a schema, the proper schema for the table, right? So you have some X number of columns with different column names, etc. But you like basically this is a requirement for the table. And with document oriented databases, you don't have such schema. It's not a requirement. So you can create one, but it's not a requirement. So it will not have some. Let's say you have a, I don't know, the ball, product ball, and you have some color and size and probably type, let's say, right? and another product in your database. You have something like T-shirt with completely different values and properties. And in relational database, in the table, you need to have all these columns, right? Because some of them will be populated, some not. So even if you have a T-shirt, you need to have columns with, I don't know, color for the and the ball size, right? And maybe the some type for balls, etc. But or you can eventually you'll start creating a separate tables for some balls, for T-shirts, for pants, for anything else, and you start merging them and you processing all this data, which is very wasteful. Instead of the object like document-oriented database, you have just an object. Each object can have separate structure with separate different properties and values, and it doesn't matter because it's just a huge object like a JSON, as I already mentioned. So that is why it's very popular for e-commerce, for catalogizing. What is the word? Anyone? Catalog. To store, let's say, to store your data. Yeah, we have an answer.
Categorize. Is that what it?
Categorizing.
Categorize.
Yeah. Yoo-hoo. Thank you. Yeah. So that is why it's more efficient for such needs, and that is why it's popular. And as you can see, that the whole internet is all about selling something. So that is why it's a big part. The Mongo and the document-oriented databases, they are very popular. And even more, we will not talk about that now, but so we have, you still need to build a path to your particular object in within the table, within the document. But we have GraphQL, which allows you to build specific and get specific things from the database. So let's say you have an object user with different properties like first name, last name, email, probably the address, telephone number, and I don't know, many other things. And with GraphQL, so this is an object, right? So you can get the whole object from the MongoDB. But you don't want to waste your resources to get whole object if you just need a name, maybe first name, last name, and the telephone number. With GraphQL, you can query these three particular things. So you're saying, get this user and get me just first name, last name, and the phone number. This is very useful for front-enders, and that is why front-enders really like GraphQL, because you don't need to do all this filtering, sorting on the front end. You just query particular things that you need in this particular instance, and you have it. And again, this is because of these document-oriented databases. So, and in our case, as I mentioned, we will talk about MongoDB. And we today we will do more coding rather than talking, because MongoDB is just a database, and you're already familiar. This is a huge object. There is nothing to talk about for hours. It's about to show you how to use it, to show how to do the setup, and basically start using it. So today we will want to build a server. We will do that, but I'll show you just quickly all resources that you need to use when you will do your exercises, when you will work on some projects, etc. So, setup. First, here, if you have an underscore, that means this is a link. So you need to install MongoDB on your machine. So if you go here, we have a few options. So we have cloud version, so you can register and get a free cloud. So they have a paid version, but for free they provided you 500 megabytes, I think, for the data storage, which is more than enough for all your projects. And it's very easy to set up, because in the end, when you have the cloud, you will I'll show you that today how to do that. but in the end you will get just a link that you need to use in your to connect your to that database. Just a link, basically. You'll write like a MongoDB connect and URL, and you're in, and this is it, and you can post data, get data, etc. So this is a cloud version. Another one on premises means that you will have for your local host, if you want to run your servers locally and have your database locally, like we did with MySQL, you can also install it. So to do that, you need to download the version, this one, and then you need to store it somewhere on your laptop. And let me show you. So mine is, give me a second. So mine, I put it into the root. On the root folder of my laptop. So I have my MongoDB, and if we have lsla MongoDB folder, we have a few files there. This is what you will download. You will download this archive, and when you unzip it, you will have these files. And if we go further inside, you will have a few files here. So to do that, so now you have basically you need to run MongoD file to be able to run your server. And here in my slide, basically create a DB folder, and you put in that folder into the root of your machine. And in your CLI, what you want to run is this command. So you executing the like executable file MongoD that I just showed you, and show the path to the database. So let me show it to you. So we have like just user, not like that, user, then we have, I think it's colors and hoods, then we have MongoDB, then we have bin, and then we have MongoD. And for my database, I have a separate folder, so it's db, is it db pass? I think it's db pass equals, and user, then we have colors and hoods, and then we have Mongo, I think data, yeah. So if I run this command, I might, yeah, I got an error because I need to have access to it. So I need to run sudo yeah. So now it's running. So I have locally I'm running my server for my database, Mongo database. It might be confusing on this point because if you start thinking about, okay, I can run MySQL server, I can run MongoDB server, I need to run my React server, I need to run some Express server. And that might be confusing, but eventually you need to, when you work with database, you need one or another, right? So you don't need to run MySQL and MongoDB. But you still need, and to simplify it, again, you might use just cloud version and like serverless version. And we will talk about serverless later in this course, but probably in 2 weeks. But the whole point is that you creating the database and you can run it here. And you can use their cloud service, which I'll show you in a few minutes how to use it. Okay, so the next thing is, this is basically the very basic structure of the MongoDB setup. So you need to install MongoDB package, then you need to destructure from there Mongo client, and here the connection URL. So for connection URL for your local host, you need to provide basically localhost and the port and the database name, and this is it. For the cloud service, you will just provide the cloud URL to your database. And then you have just Mongo client, connect, you provide in the URL, then you provide in, this is some flags for the Mongo itself. And this is because when you're running, you will get warnings, what you need to add because something is deprecated, some settings, so you just provide in these things and you'll be fine. And the callback you basically have in your database. and you have an error and a client, and if it's error, you want to return and terminate your server and show the basically some error, and if it's successful, then you just get access to your database. And I'll show you again how to get data from the database, because database is just a huge object with a lot of methods that you can query and get your data or store data, etc. So here I put two links. First is documentation, very useful link, and here you can just go through all of that, read how you can query Siri wants to talk.
A ferry is a merchant.
Ferry ship, you're right. So here basically the full documentation. You can they have a tab MongoDB CRUD operations. So this is probably what you need, because you need to run some create operations, because we will build the Express server and we need to have a like create operations. We want to be able to read and get elements by something, and I'll show you how to do that. And update, of course, and we have delete as well. So this is CRUD, very simple, and you'll see that it is actually, it sounds scary to learn how to work with Mongo or how to work with MySQL, but eventually it's just a few methods that you need to use to get your data, store your data, update or delete. It's very simple. And the another one, this is, they actually, Mongo provides you CRUD tutorials. So they actually like have you saw Google Labs things? They didn't want to try to play with Google Labs. No. So what they do is basically so they provide you like a very detailed tutorial how to do something. And for example, insert data in MongoDB, and you selecting like on which one you want to use. So in our case, we use Node.js, and maybe you selecting, is it local or cloud? So let's say cloud. And here they are showing you that, okay, you need to set up the Mongo client, then you want to assert it while why do they do research? Oh, right, to handle error. It's not a requirement, but you can use it. And the URL to the cloud, and then you'll be able to get access to your server. So then you can just switch to the test database, and that will be here. So you have your database and collection. So this is how you insert in data. So you have database, then you call the method collection, and collection is basically something inside that, kind of like for MySQL is table in the database. Here is document in a database, and which is, for example, inventory, and you can insert something into the table, which is a record, and you just insert it. So you can see that it's just an object. You pass in just an object, right? So you don't do, it's not complicated. It's with MySQL, again, you need to provide data for the columns, and in the columns you have specified and columns that needs to be provided, so you have a lot of requirements. But here it's just very flexible. You pass in an object and that will create such record there. This is it, very simple, and you can handle the results. So and again, they have such tutorials for every single method. They have some for how to install, secure your MongoDB deployment, etc. So you can play with it as well. So let's actually create some database access. So let me just quickly CD. Do you have any questions before we start?
If we want to hosts some of our projects using MongoDB, I mean we have to use the cloud version. Cloud.
Yeah, exactly. So for the cloud version, like MongoDB. Sign in. Let me sign in. Whew, quite a few. So yeah, basically this is a cloud version, and normally you start from, let me just remove this one so we can start all together from the very beginning. Active reject projects. All right, we have some active projects, sorry. Come on. 1 second. Terminate cluster. Sorry, I need to wait. Meanwhile, lesson. Still doing that. So yeah, if you want to have a backend, let's say, you need to host your data somewhere, and if you want to have your database, you need to store. You need to run your host, your cloud version, so you can query the database. And you still need, besides that, so this is just a database. You still need to. You can use Heroku, I think, to deploy your application, the backend. Heroku also gives you some free space for your product, yeah, and help be MVP. So it's more than enough for you. 500 hours per month for calls, which is just ridiculous for hobby and for private projects, side projects. So you can easily just use Heroku to deploy. We might talk about Heroku a bit later in the course as well, how to when we talk about deployment. Remember that for those who joined from the previous cohort, Sam promised you to show you how to deploy your projects.
So does that mean like if you download the MongoDB on your local machine, you cannot host whatever your project is anywhere?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you run your laptop all the time, if you specify the IP, you have static IP to your server, then you can do that. But obviously, you probably sometimes you close your laptop.
Yeah, but no, what I mean, you can take your MongoDB and your project files, and you can host it somewhere else.
Oh yeah, sure.
That's possible, isn't it?
Yeah. This is the whole point, that you can have everything local. You can build everything, and then you just deploy into some server.
Yeah, deploying is basically another word. You are transferring your file from your machine to a cloud, another machine somewhere else.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so before we start, so this is a cloud, right? This is a cluster, so you need to register, and you'll land on this empty page, not this page. Let me just remove. Delete. That will complain about projects. Internal projects. Delete. A few more deletes, and we'll be fine. Yeah. So this is your main when you're landing. it will ask you what kind of database you want to create, but let me just start with just a regular one, just with localhost. So let's actually follow the tutorials so you can see how easy they are. Graph tutorials. Oh, install MongoDB. We have just installation. Okay, migrate CRUD. Local. Great. So I'm pretty sure this one is still for remote, but okay. Yeah, so let me install MongoDB. Install MongoDB. We also want to npm install. Yeah, that's enough for now. We don't need Express for now. So const MongoDB is require MongoDB const. So we have Mongo. Is it Mongo Connect? Client. Mongo client. And this comes from Mongo, right? So I can destructure like this, or I can write. Oh, here's the documentation. They suggesting you can do this, right? So just get in as an object. So theoretically, you can do just this if you don't need anything else. From Mongo, then you can do this. But just to make it cleaner and keep it separately, I want to create a Mongo client. So then I want to have my URL connection URL, and here I will have a localhost and 3. I don't remember what is a port for that one? Let me check. Do we have a default port? Dum 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 dum. Let me just Google for default port, MongoDB default port, this one. So I think that should be like this. I actually can check it in my different project, and give me a second. Yeah, this one, that's correct. And this is it. So we have a URL, and we want to have a database name. Database name. DB name. And how do you want to call it? Let's call it users, right? Let's create some users database. So now what I want to have is initialize connect to my Mongo client. So Mongo client dot connect. If you have any question on any point, just interrupt me and ask. So here the first argument, as we saw, should be URL, right? Connection URL, which is this one. So we have it. And the second argument, I will avoid it for a second. For now, I will call just a callback function, which is the body. So error and client. This is what we have for now. And if error, I want to return so log, because I want to terminate the function error with the DB, something like that. Not very descriptive, but we can use it. And we might put this error as another argument. Otherwise, I want to actually create and connect to the database. So const db should be my client, right? So I'm taking this parameter, client.db, and my db name, which is users. I think this is it. So we can console log. This is a basic setup for the database. Console log db. Let's see what we have. db name, right? We created a variable. So no daemon index. Beautiful. Invalid connection string. What? Why doesn't like it? Oh right, sorry. I forgot. For a log, because Mongo requires the actually MongoDB prefix, not HTTP, just MongoDB. That is why. So that should be like this. This is actually important. Now you can see that we are actually getting something from the database, right? So now it's listening, we're getting something. And if to get everything, let's check our CRUD operations. So delete, update, read, right? Find. So we have db collection find. Let's try to do that. db collection find. If I'm not providing any arguments, that means that we are getting the we are getting everything. And let's check what find is not a function. Beautiful. Awesome. So why is that? Let me think. Right. So if you take collection, I think I know why. Save it. We have a function, right? So this is a function. And I think that we want to for the collection, where is their docs? Switch. Go back. So for read, we have find, specify, query on array. So this one gives you ability to convert it to array. So find, and let me just, their docs are pretty confusing, to be honest, but I want to show you the MongoDB array to array. Not this one. DB collection find. I think this one. To array. Yeah, it's still cursor. Okay. So this one basically converts the response to array, and you can get your data as an array. So let me try to do that. DB collection. Collection is a function, so we want to call it. We might want to have find, and then, so let's say for this now, so it collection name must be a string. So this one should be let's call it, yeah, so collection is the table, right? So actually table should be users. So let's call my DB. Sorry, naming is always a trouble. DB. And here I want to have, so what it does, if you don't have this database, it will initialize this database. And here we want to have users. So to find, save, we're getting the response, right? And if it do to array, we have promise, and because we have sorry, I remember that we haven't covered promises, but we have a callback error, and we have data, and we theoretically can get rid of this one because we don't do await async. We have just console log data. And you can see that we have an empty array, right? This is what I said, that we have these deprecation warnings. Remember that I showed you here that you might need to pass some extra parameters. And this is deprecation warnings, and they actually saying you that this is deprecated, you need to pass an option of this. So all you're doing is just pass as a second argument, save, and now we don't have this notification, we just have an empty table, right? Empty document. So to insert something, let's actually go and see how we can insert data. So we have connect, we have this, so we have insert one, right? So we're doing the same thing. Dot insert one, and you just pass in an object, right? First name Alex, last name. So I don't need to specify any columns, any data, like any structure, anything. I'm just passing a random object, and that will create that record. Age 29, let's say, and I think that we pass in this one and as a callback, because do we want to handle callback? Yeah, let's do this. This is just their syntax. So because this is asynchronous, we want to have a callback to see the response. And here we have, as usual, error, and we have like result, and if we have if error, let me just copy this one because it just had error handling, else I want to console log successful. Success, right? Save. So I've stored it, and you can see because everything is asynchronous, this one runs our read runs before actually saving. That is why we have an empty array. But even if it goes after, it's still asynchronous. So call your code called later than we expect. But for the second call, if I commented out my inserting save, we actually have a record, right? So now every time I save, I'm getting my record. And now we can combine this with our express, because we can just query data and use our callbacks to handle this data. Okay. Questions on the read and insert? Any questions? No? Okay. Okay, so yeah. I mean, we can follow the delete and update, but I think it doesn't matter for now. because we want to create the actual working endpoints together. So we'll see how to do that. Okay. Let me actually, sorry, 1 second. So okay, so we have some, AJ has some troubles. Yeah. Yeah. So one more nice bonus from MongoDB and their team is that they providing free courses. They have like a Mongo University, and you can actually do their course if you're really keen to learn Mongo. The whole course basically, and they go in very deep with MongoDB, and you can just go through it and learn. I haven't started it, but I think it might be useful for me as well to just to go through, and if I need to use Mongo more in my work. So yeah, course overview. They have introduction, driver setups, user-facing backend, admin backend, resilience, and exam. So yeah, I believe that you can be even certified to get some certification from Mongo. I think certifications, how to become certified. Yeah, exactly.
How many chapters they have?
Sorry?
How many chapters they
have? 4. I mean, kind of 6.
So just total 6 chapters, that's it.
Yeah, so they have, I mean, Mongo is just Mongo. It's not something big. And that is why I said that today, that there is not much to talk about. It's just about doing stuff. Because they have like 9 videos, 10 videos, 22 videos, 7, 12, and 7. This is it, and even this one is just an exam. So here, basically, we have just a few videos.
After 4 chapters, you are certified. Not bad.
Yeah. So after 4 chapters, kind of 5th, right? Because.
Oh yeah, that's 0.
0. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So you can try yourself. I think that will be helpful for you to spend some free time for that. Okay, so let's actually let me show you an example. So we did it with local one, but let me show you an example how to do it with the cloud one, and we create an actual API with Express with the remote one, and I'll show you how to do that. So let me just remove. I mean, most of them will be the same. And let me just try. Okay, so we removing DB. We don't need the technically. We need this part. We still need. I think that it's pretty similar, but let's go to the cloud. So. Extend device from the cloud to manage your data. Take free course to become certified. Ooh, can't help, connect, discuss, live. Yeah. So we want to have a database. First thing, it asks about organization. So you want to create some organization. And you basically can click. Name your organization. So I don't know, colors. And hits next. Members permissions, I already have my email here, so I don't need. I can create like a root, maybe. Organization owner. I don't know. And now I want to create a project. So for us, that will be a hotel project. So DB, right? Members, so root, project owner, create. Okay, I just got an email that I created in the server. So yeah, now you need to create a cluster. Cluster is a place where you can create a lot of databases. And here you have your pricing, but we are happy with the free one. So we're just creating. Here they asking you where you want to host your database. So Google Clouds, AWS, Azure, and probably on that stage you don't really care. So let me just check some Europe or Ireland. And so this one, additional settings, we don't have anything. Cluster name, cluster 0 is perfect name for it. Traffic lights, can you imagine that? Okay, so we're creating, and now it's loading. You can see that it is loading. So we need to wait a few minutes while it creates the actual thing. So give some time. Do you have any questions on that moment while we're waiting?
You choose AWS, but you're already connected, or we should have an account?
You don't need to do anything. They will host it for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, just a random one. So when you said they will host it, they will host only the database, not like a whole project.
Yeah, database.
Only database, yeah.
Yeah. So you'll create database, let's say here with their server, and then you will create your server, for example, in Google Clouds or in Heroku, which is free, and you can then you'll basically getting data from their server and sending data to the front end.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Give me a second. So while it's loading, we might want to install. So that was the local one. So let me stop the server. We will not use it anymore. And here I want to npm install express. My computer is very laggy today. I don't know why. Just crazy. How laggy is it? Oh gosh. Still loading. Any other questions, maybe? No? Okay.
I have one.
Yep.
Will we have to download like MongoDB to do any exercise in the future? I mean, I haven't started yet, so I don't know if we've already.
Yeah, so yes, basically, we will ask you to build today's exercise homework. I mean, we will ask you about that, but in general, so we suggest you to use MongoDB if you want, because this is MERN stack, right? But if you don't want to use MongoDB and you think that you'll find with MySQL, for example, then you can use it MySQL. It doesn't matter. we don't mind. We will not force you to use MongoDB, but I think that it's beneficial for you to actually use MongoDB. Yeah.
So we can use either MongoDB or SQLite.
Yeah,
Only one.
MySQL. I mean, if you want to use for different projects, different things, yeah, sure, why not? But so for like, for us, like for you that you've joined from the previous cohort, that means that you can build your final project with something. Or for current students, for the full cohort, that means that you can decide what kind of database you want to use for all following modules. So you can use any. Yeah.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, I suggest to use MongoDB because this is part of MERN stack. But like in general, it doesn't make big difference.
Is it the MongoDB in more demand or the SQ?
MongoDB, if you think about full stack development and you're talking about Node and React, I would say that in 95% chances you have to get Mongo as a database.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so we have cluster. Great. We are so excited to have cluster. And here I want to connect. So if I go to collections in my cluster, collections means databases, right? So we don't have any databases. And if I go back to the cluster, I want to connect it to it. And I want to allow anyone from anywhere to connect. And I want to choose the connection method. Wait a second, I need to provide username. Root. And from anywhere at API, create connection and connect your application. So this is all I need to make run my to connect to the actual database. So just this URL. Right here, if you click full driver code example, so you have something like that, which we're already doing, right? So we don't need to think about that. We just need the URL. So copy, go here, replace this URL. And here we have username, which is root, password, which is root, and the database name, I don't know, hotel, not hotel. Yeah, I think this is it. So hotel, and I think that we don't need this stuff, but let's just double check. So we want to have db.collections.insert1, I don't know, and name test, right? So I just want to run my code and see, can I actually add something to the database? Save, run my node daemon, get some errors. Authentication failed. So my password or my setup connection security, right, doesn't like my security. Root, create database user. Yeah, I think now that should work. So let me try again. Save. Yeah, no. Still no? Come on, you got to be kidding. So root, password. Why we are failing authentication? Let me stop the server and try to rerun. Maybe it just cached. No. Did I fail to? MongoDB. Just a quick one. If I remove this, collection name must be a string, right? Save. Way too far. Changes before starting. Sorry. Collection. Oh, right. This one should be, I don't know, clients. Save. Okay, it is working. Beautiful. So let's go now to collections. And we here in clients, now we have our name tests, right? Which is great. So we already can create a record. Fabulous. So let me just refresh. We can remove this one, delete. And we don't have anything. Beautiful. Then we can, let me actually create 2 records, maybe, so we can use like get express, get requests, and clients. So first name, I know. Name and page saved. Refresh. We have our record, right? Which is good. Okay, so let me just think that's what we want to have. We want to create an express. An express call. So can anyone remind me how to set up express? So you definitely need to export it, right? What next do you want to do?
Install it.
Yeah, I already did.
Server express
Okay,
express function.
like this.
Yes.
Okay, and so now we should be able to have like server
Listen.
listing. Okay, 3000, right? And some message. Listing on port 3000. Yeah, listening. Good. Awesome. So I might write some very dirty version, but so here the next thing, let's create some endpoints, right? The root endpoints of server dot get. This is the basic endpoint, and we have response request and response, right? We want to not console log, just response send. And hello. So the next thing that I need is my postman. It is loading, give me a second.
Sorry, Vasil. I wanted to ask you if we're going to host again our website. Is the Express still listen for port 3000?
No. So for that instance, you have const port equals and environment. You have environment and wait a second. What is a port environment? Give me a second. What is the syntax?
Process.env.
Yeah. Yep. Process exactly. Process dot env
env
environment, and I think it's client, right?
port.
Port, just port. Okay. Or 3000. So for local, it will work because you have just 3000. But if you host in Heroku or whatever, it will pick up the environment port and it will use that port. Yep. So you need to basically in production, you need to do this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, yeah, so let me just avoid this port. I think now it is working great. So if we hit 3000 with get method send, we have hello, right? Which is cool. Awesome. Okay. So let me just look for the sorry. So we have an endpoint and we want to get something from the MongoDB, right? So we want to get the data, all data basically. Sorry. So how to do that? What we actually want to do is here. To be honest, let me just, because I might be wrong. I did it a while ago, but I think that you can do something like const data. You have your db.collection client, and then you have find to find all to array, and then you send in that back. You need to stringify, right? JSON stringify. So let me actually check that. So we have we're listening. That should be in the end. Just to make sure that we keep the structure. Save. Let's try to hit.
Sorry, Vasil. I think I might miss what you're using right now. What is? Not that one. The thing that you just opened.
This one. Oh, this one. This is a Postman.
Sorry.
Postman. 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 This is application where you can mock your queries, basically your front end queries.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we, for some reason, we have an empty array, which is odd, right? Let me just console log, and we have data. Right, I know why. Why? Can anyone help me why? Remember that we just had an issue that we posting, then we try to get, and so inserting, then we try to get, and it didn't work. We had empty array. Remember, a few minutes ago we had this problem because this is asynchronous. So we have a call on Sunday, right? Yep. No? Anyone?
I'm for Sunday.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So as you can see, now I'm getting. Ooh, we have right because we saved our code quite a few times before we actually. Yeah, we saved it quite a few times before we changed it. So let me just delete for these two. So now when we hit this endpoint again, and we just make it structure, as you can see, we have our record, right? And it's not a lot, right? So we have our Mongo connection, then we are connecting to the database, and we just getting the data on and reaching this endpoint, and we just sending it back. Pretty simple, right? So another thing that we can do is to have the server post. Let's say that we want to have client's endpoint, right? Because we don't want just to root. So server dot post, and we have the same endpoint clients. We have async request response, and now what do you want to do? How do you want to handle that? So we don't want to have this, but how do you want to handle that? How we can get the value, the data that we are posting here?
You have to press in the body.
Okay, so let's get I don't know, client, new client, right? New client equals request.body, correct? So now we will get our new client. Let's actually test it. So log new client, and let's say edit. So if I reach my endpoint, but with post request, and remember we changed it, clients, and I will add a new user. So in body, oh, I already have it, beautiful. So if I send it, so we have added, and here we have undefined. Can anyone remind me why we have undefined? You definitely did it.
Await.
Await.
Not await. I mean await, yes, but not actually await. So yeah, we can do await because we are waiting for the promise, and then we can parse it, but we can add middleware for the Express and have server, so it will Express will handle that automatically for us.
Yeah. Express.json.
Express.json. Yeah. So now every query will be handled, pre-handled, let's say, and now you can use just this request.body. So let's try again. Send, edit. We have our user. Beautiful. So now, as we have our user, what we want to do is just send it to our clients and insert one, right? And pass the object. This is it. We can wrap it again for error handling. We can wrap it into try catch to catch errors or pass the callback, etc. But for now, we just don't care about this. So now if I save it, go to database, refresh my database, I don't have my record, just the first one, right? Alex Smith. So if I go here with post, I click post, edit. So now if I try to reach my database with lines, sent, and format it, I have my second record, right? And the problem, so it's very useful that you don't have like a limits, right? So I can do for another post, I can have, I don't know, sale, myth, age, and weight. Yep. 75, right? And if I post it, it's added. If I refresh here, we have the third one, which has completely different structure. We have another thing. And sometimes that might be a problem. But we will get to the point how to actually handle these things. So let's actually go back to our exercises, and we want to create doctors, patients, and be able to get doctors, get patients by doctor's ID, right? So we want to have just 3 endpoints. Let's start to do that. So I don't know, hospital, right? A new database hospital, and we have I don't know, API doctors. Doctors, right? So this is a get for doctors. So here, this is just strings. Basically, this is we are determine the endpoints. So it can be anything. I just think that it would be nice to have API doctors, and here to post we will take one and have doctors. So basically we already have it, post and get for doctors. Okay, same for patients. We definitely want to have collection, doctor, edit. We want to have a few more patients, and here we want to have patients, here same things. And for patients, we're actually requiring the doctor's ID, right? So when you pass in the doctor's ID, so we can fetch it by doctor's ID. And how we can, yeah, let's do that. So the next endpoint, the last endpoint, is get endpoint, but for doctors ID and patients patients, right? So we want to get this ID somehow. How can we do that? Anyone?
Param.
Yep. Request.params.id, right? And now we want to find patients doctor's ID will be the our doctor's ID basically. So we can write something like that, but it doesn't matter because we can just shorten to one line, to just one word. So, and it doesn't know anything about this collection. That means that if you want to be able to get patients by doctor's ID, when you create a patient, you need to provide a doctor's ID, right? So that means that you need to provide this doctor's ID, and then you'll be able to get them. Let me just show you. So let me create some doctors. So we have clients, we have doctors, and we have we don't care about age for now. So post. Okay. Cannot post to doctors. Why? Oh, right, because we don't have such endpoint. It should be like this. Doctors edit. Let's go. Send. Then we have Sam Parker. Send. So we have 3 doctors in database. Let's refresh the whole thing and we will be able to see another database, hospital, right? And here we have doctors, which is in MySQL is a table, and we have 3 records. Okay. So now we want to add some patients. And for example, here we have patients. We want to add some, I don't know, Tom Smith. We have a lot of Smith. So add. Let's see what we have. And it looks like we have patients. We have 1 record. We forgot about doctor's ID, right? See? Silly me. So delete. And let's actually... So we want to be able to provide get ID. So this is object ID, which is formatted in MongoDB style. So as I remember, yeah, this is object ID. And let me just copy this. MySQL has the same problem. Sorry. Okay. So we want to be able to get by, so if you go to your database, you will query your doctors, you'll see all these IDs, right? And you want to be able to get patients by doctor ID. And when you create your patient, you want to provide doctor ID. And that should be remind me, object ID. Is it object ID? Object, yeah, object ID. I think that should be something like that. Or maybe not, it should be just an ID. Yeah, that should be just an ID. Why it's looking, yeah, right, sorry, my bad. It might be So if I have a get, yeah, we have just an ID. So we can use something like that, doctor's ID. And if I post, so I've added one patient. Yeah. So now we should be able to get by the doctor's ID. So when you query, imagine that you go into the website, you have a list of doctors, and when you click on specific doctor, you get in this doctor's ID, and then you can find the actually patient by doctor's ID, right? Or patients, or let me add a few more patients with the same doctor's ID. And you know, any names. Okay, so I think that should be enough. I have quite a few. Patients, right? With all based related to the same doctor. But let's use another doctor's ID just to distinct them. Come on. Okay, cancel. And another one to other doctor. Something like that. So here in my patients, I have 4 patients, and I need to look for by doctor's ID, right? Oh, look at this. It avoids, doesn't know about it. That's fine. So now let me just, we don't want to have document update. Sorry, I thought that it might help them to make it as object ID, but it's not that smart. So when you're creating and that generated automatically, it will create object ID, but which is a separate type in database. But it's not that smart. So we just change it back manually. Yeah, okay. So now if I pass my ID and I have doctor's ID patients, right? Here what I'm getting, I want to find by doctor's ID, yeah, and it is so doctor ID, so that should be not doctors, should be doctor ID. That will be fine for us. So we should be able to get 3 records. Here it's not a post, we are trying to have, right, sorry, well, it's not about post, it's about get, right? So we're reaching doctors, then doctor's ID, and then patients. So send, beautiful, very helpful. Cannot get, why? As usually we're missing our API on the beginning. Yep, looks like we have 3 records, right? Not 4, just 3. So we get it then by doctor's ID. And this is how you use find. You're basically providing the parameters to the find. You also can imagine that you're looking for first 2 maybe you want to show the latest, the last patient that you just added to the doctor, or maybe first one or last one, or let's say last one. You can use limit and have just 1. So now if I reach this endpoint, I'm getting just one client, right? So that might help you, like Tom Smith here is the very first one. So the oldest client, and that you might use it for a queue. So it is the oldest one, then I take it first, etc. But and all these methods you can read in MongoDB documentation, which I again left here documentation. Do you have any questions on this one? Because as you can see, it's very, very simple. So you're just creating your endpoints and this is it. You have your MongoDB, you connect it, and then you just have your endpoints and send in data. Any questions on that one?
I have one. We now using request of body from the postman, right?
Yeah.
How can we get the request of body? It's like we have to write something in the JavaScript file.
Sorry, which one?
Now we're using body from the postman, but we're not using postman in the production, like in the real world.
Yeah. But that means that when you just with fetch on the JavaScript on the front end, you just fetch with method post and pass in body as usual.
So it's like we have to communicate between front-end JavaScript and back-end JavaScript, back-end Node.js.
Yeah, this is the whole point. That is why we decided actually to use Node, because you communicating between JavaScript and JavaScript from in different sides of the application, from in a backend and on the front end. So yeah, Postman is basically because when you build in your backend, you don't really want to think on that point about your front end, and maybe you're just backend developer, you never write your front end, and some other developers write it. So you need to test your servers and endpoints somehow. That is why we use Postman, because it's very easy to test all your endpoints.
I see, yeah.
And you can build, like I did before, like task app, and you can build a list like endpoints, so you can just not constantly change in here, but you have predefined endpoints and you can just go and do your requests. You can edit and have like a template. So yeah.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Ooh, give a sec. Sorry, I'm sneezing the whole day. Yeah. So, okay, if you have, we have endpoints, we know how to find elements, we know how to inject elements, and we might want to know how to delete elements, right? So you can create another endpoint. Delete. And let's delete patients by their IDs. So we want to delete one, and where ID is ID, right? So we want to have patient, probably different endpoint, and ID. So here we have request params and patient ID. Here we have patient ID, right? So we delete it. So let's try actually. Let me just go to our database, patients, and try to remove some Ben Barker. for example. And so I'm going to API patient and the patient ID, and I should be able, so we don't need to have body because we have delete method. So if I hit that endpoint, we should lose this bad marker. Let's try. We still have it. And this is because our ID, so let me just check, is it smart enough? But I'll show you in a second why it's happening. Maybe it's just smart enough to handle that queries. No, it's not that smart enough. So you want to have object ID is a different thing. And you want to actually pass not ID, but object ID. Object ID. As you can see, my autocomplete helps me, but what I can do actually is just destructure from MongoDB, because it's not destructured yet. So I can destructure it from here, save it, and now let's try again, because this is a different type of elements. Delete it. I still might be able to pass, I probably need to pass underscore. Yeah, I probably need to pass underscore. And let me just send, refresh. Come on. Yeah, now we are able to delete it. So because these IDs generated automatically, they're not just a string or a number, they actually have a different type, which is object ID. And you need to use this object ID and wrap your string or number into it, and then you'll be able to target your element. And this object ID comes from MongoDB, and you have the same feature in MySQL. So if you will do something with MySQL and say like, what the heck, and why I can target my element and can't delete or update or whatever, that might be because you're not using object ID. And you can see that in your database that it's stored as object ID, then you need to remember that you need to use it, and you will have it here to convert it to the object ID type. Questions?
If we want to delete more than one,
Yeah.
All patients for a particular doctor?
Yeah, sure. So we can delete many, and just many. And I believe that we can do just this. Patient by particular doctor. Good thing. So let's actually do this endpoint, right? So let's actually create just another endpoint. So delete one, and we will create another endpoint for this one. So by doctor, but delete. We will have delete many. Where's the doctor's ID? Will be patient. It's not patient ID, it's doctor's ID, right? That should be doctor ID and doctor ID. So yeah, basically this. Doctor ID. Okay. All patients deleted, something like that. So let's try to reach this endpoint with some doctor's ID, and we have, so basically we need to we will remove these two, right? Let me just go to my postman, delete this one, and for ID I will use this one. So, and if we when we reach this endpoint, we should be able to remove these two patients. So let's try. Hit. Right. Would be nice to not have spellings. So send. All patients deleted. And we should be lose these two, right? So let me refresh. And as you can see, we have just one patient. Yep. Questions?
Can you please show us update as well?
Update.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So we still have one patient, which is great. We can play with it one. So we have post, we have update, and we have body. So we want to update one, and where we select by what? By name, let's say, right? First name, name, so we have in body, we have new client or update client, and we can select by, so we still need to provide an ID, I would say. I mean, you can do that in different ways, but I will do this in patient, so to have a separate argument. ID equals request params and ID, and here ID object ID patient ID, right? Patient ID. So we're selecting this one, and I, to be honest, don't remember the one for update. So let me just check this, because I think that it takes just a second argument. So update one, yeah, you have selecting by, I don't know, by item, and you setting something, right? Sorry. Yeah, so let's try to do that. So we are passing, so this is the first argument, this is, come on, this is the second argument. They providing current date, which is, we don't want to modify current date. So you're setting some, I don't know, what they want to have, name from Julia, right? So we have, where's our database? We have first name. First name should be, I don't know, Sam. And we want to add another value, let's say, should be age. We don't have age. No, we don't have age. 28. Something like that. Let me count all my parentheses. So we have this, we're missing one closing bracket. Like that. I think that should work. So now if I Is it patch? It's probably patch, right? Yeah, it's patch. So let me try to patch with this patient ID, which is this one. So now if I call this with patch, I need to pass body. Oh, I forgot about body, right? I hard coded, sorry. Where's this one? So I want to have basically we want to the structure from our body, first name and age. So now here we can use just first name and age, not hard coding. So here in my patch, I want to first name Sam. Come on, Sam, and age 25. And if I hit, let me just update it. So all data, let's refresh to make sure that we have all data. And now if I hit patch, oh my gosh, say again, update it. So let's go and check, actually, did we update? So if I refresh, you can see that we have age, we updated first name, and we still have all data, right? Any other questions?
I have, if from the front end comes put request, should we have put here as well?
Where?
From if we
Oh yeah, you mean this one?
yes.
Yeah, so the put is just a different request. So
yeah, I mean from the front end we have we are fetching with the put. I mean here when we communicate with the server, should we use the put request again?
so
Maybe both the same.
Here basically you define in which request you want to handle, and if you if you send in put requests and you not handle input requests here, it will never run your it will never trigger your server action.
Mm-hmm.
So
we should handle with the same request.
Yeah, so it's basically front end. So here you define in which endpoint and which method you will be able to handle, and front end will send some, and you will your server will run your code, check for the method, check for the endpoint URL, and if it matches, then it will execute the code inside. Yep.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so for those who are very curious and think about like, I want more, this is not enough, I'm hungry for new knowledges. Remember I mentioned that what if you want to standardize your records? What if you're, so you have your first name, last name, and maybe age, let's say, and maybe doctor ID. But what if somebody will send you another data? You need to validate it. You need to somehow make sure that you have this consistent structure for your data, right? And you want maybe somehow to not just validate, but maybe some sanitize, etc. So what you can do, you can write your good old validators here, like first name, age, right? So you just get in, and then you can create some functions that will check is age a number, is first name a string, Is it just alphabetic characters, etc.? So you can do all of that. Or you can be smart and use Mongoose, which is another nice animal. And Mongoose, basically what they are saying about themselves is that they provide a schema-based solution to model your application data. So basically you can typecast, validate, and query, build the queries for your server. And it's very easy to build models. So every time you create a model, so basically you connect into your MongoDB, right? So they have their own connect. So you export in Mongoose, then you connect to MongoDB with same parameters, same stuff. It's not just Mongo, but Mongoose. And then you create in models. That means that you can you're saying that I want to create a model cat. And the cat supposed to have a name string. And that will typecast your provided data from the front end. So if you pass something, the name, and that will be a number, that will fail. That will throw you an error. Or you might say that this name is required. And if you send some data from the front end and you don't have a name, that will throw you an error that it's not valid. And it helps you to standardize your queries and validate all of them. This is the only purpose of Mongoose. But it's still very popular for people who build in big applications and they want to make sure that the data handled in proper way. So for today we discussed that we can pass, one user can have first name, last name, doctor, and age. Another can have first name, last name, and I don't know, favorite pet or whatever. So because we're not validating, we're not standardizing that. That is why people use Mongoose. And again, it's very straightforward. You're just creating this. You can read about modules. You can read about models. Sorry. And you can read how to create models, how to work with them. But this is like extra saying that if you're wondering and if you're curious how to work with them, just read documentation here. And if you will work on something, and feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help in our Slack. Questions on this one? No? So about the module project, I'm thinking about some trading application. So where you will work with some external API, and when you get the query from the front end, you need to get the data from the other API and basically map it and transfer to the front end. It might require to use some WebSockets, which we will learn later. And I'm not sure, is it a good exercise, a good thing for the project, for you to build this like real-time trading server. I might think about something else like today, tomorrow, and I'll let you know in our channel. But that should be something interesting. I hope that you'll enjoy it. Yeah. Okay. I think